Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tabletop Tabletalk. Oh my gosh. Oh, wait, I can hear myself twice. Hate that. Hate that. All right, I fixed it. I am here with the delightful and creative Kienna.
Hi.
Kienna, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Kienna or Kienna Shaw. My pronouns are she and they. I am a TTRPG designer, writer, community person, streamer. I do a lot of stuff around the internet, but super excited to be here.
Yeah, you like I'm glad I got a chance to talk to you because you do so much. And I think
Yep.
you do, but you're a great example of if someone is dedicated to it and they put in the effort and time, it's not easy, but you can make it work and you can still tell amazing stories.
Yes. You get there eventually.
Yeah.
Time management is a thing that exists.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about Candlekeep. We're going to be showcasing some of it inside of the Roll20 system. And right before we get to that, Ken, I wanted to ask, so like you even talked about time management, like is when it comes to being a DM, how big of a thing is time management like to you?
Ooh, that's a really
It's a
interesting
weird
question,
question.
actually. Um, I started I first got introduced to TTRPGs through live streams actually,
Oh, cool.
through like watching people play games.
Hmm.
And most of my career
I
hobby
know it's a weird
existed
feeling.
in the tabletop space has been kind of centered around streaming. Most of my play experiences have been on streams. I am one half of the channel Salty Sweet Games, which some of you may be familiar with. My co-producer Lauren is the mod for today's show, but we also do one of the Burn Bright series that's hosted over here. Um, but yeah, so like a lot of how I visualize and think about um, my adventures and how I run them is very much in that idea that we're playing within a very specific time frame, usually pretty strict,
Hmm.
which is different than a home game where, sometimes you can be a little more flexible. Like you plan for like 3 hours and it ends up being like five because you just get so into it. You don't really have that freedom with streams. And so I think about like, how do I do everything that I want to do in this time constraint? And then I end up thinking about like, how do I make this interesting within within the space, right? And like,
Yeah.
does it make sense with how I'm managing the time and the pacing of the adventure to work with here?
That
So
makes
like,
sense.
when it's that kind of weird blend that TTRPG streaming is, where you're not just doing a game, you're also kind of producing a show, and producing a show
Mm,
means like, thinking about um, like cliffhangers.
yeah.
Where do you end off so that people want to come back for more? How do you make sure that everything keeps moving? How do you do give space to those times and those very useful times where people are actually wanting to pause and to delve into stuff? Um, so I think time management is actually very, very helpful for TTRPG streaming
Yeah.
and kind of being able to understand how to pace that and how to feel that,
Hmm.
um, which is it's a skill to learn.
Yeah.
To learn like like, oh, we're getting up to like the last 30 minutes. I better start thinking about how I want to end this,
Yeah.
and how I want this flow to feel, and whether this will feel good to me and to the players and potentially to an audience if you're sharing it with an audience.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, if, for those of you listening and watching, and those of you who are here right now, those of you who are watching later on YouTube, Kienna is one of the writers on Candlekeep Mysteries.
yeah.
And that was part of the reason that I was excited to have Kienna with me today, because even just that, like that answer about time management, I'm positive like that kind of stuff goes into your mindset when you're writing this adventure. Like, how do I give them time to progress? And if you don't know, that's totally a fine answer because it varies. Do you have an idea of like would you call your adventure a one shot? Would you call it like a 2 or 3 shot?
Yeah. So we were when we were approached to do the project for Candlekeep Mysteries, we were told, these are going to be short adventures. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, so they're not going to be a full campaign book, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, going through mine, I would say it's probably you could do it in a one shot if your one shot is around 3 to 4 hours.
Hmm.
You're looking probably more at a actual like two shot.
Yes.
Um, it's there's a lot of exploration and opportunity for conversations. There's also a lot of opportunity for combat, and that will always incredibly flux how much time you're actually using
Hmm.
in your adventure. So yeah, so like generally speaking, either a longer one shot or like a shorter 2 to 3. Um, but that's generally how I paced it out, I think.
No, that's really cool because I do. That's one of the things I liked about this book because with a lot of the other books we get, it's like you have these big adventures and then you build your own small worlds inside of it. But having these smaller adventures, these stories, these mysteries, these tales, these riddles, it was really nice to be able to have them split up and varied. And what was the name of your adventure?
Yeah, so my adventure is The Curious Tale of Wisteria Veil. It's a 11th level adventure. Basically, all the adventures go from 1 to 16.
Hmm.
I think there's at least one for each. So, yeah.
So even now, just looking at the book cover, I really like the book cover.
Yay.
It looks, looking at the book cover, it makes me think like, oh, this is gonna be like kind of like interesting, weird. But there's something strange about Wisteria Veil. And is that a person or is it a place?
So yeah, so Wisteria Veil is a place.
Ooh, okay, okay.
And in this particular adventure, it's an interesting place because there was a real Wisteria Veil, but it got destroyed. And now the Wisteria Veil that the adventurers will get to explore is a demiplane prison. Uh,
What?
yeah. Yep. Surprise. Uh, um,
Oh, it's awesome.
yeah, it's a demiplane that exists through this book as the key to that demiplane. So yeah,
What 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 made you think of a demi play?
yeah. So basically, when we were approached for this book,
Hmm.
we were basically told needs to be a short adventure, needs to start in Candlekeep,
Hmm.
needs to center around a book, at least start off with a book in Candlekeep, and then go from there. Needs to be a mystery. And I'm like, okay. Um, so I was trying to think about, a lot of for those of you who may be familiar with my previous uh stories and adventures that I've run on stream, you will know that I really like employing the nothing is quite what it seems
Hmm.
uh thing. Where like, a lot of the interesting part of the adventure is coming across a scenario and then slowly exploring through it until you find out what the truth behind the curtain is. Um,
Hmm.
and a demiplane for me felt like a really interesting location to explore that way because
Yeah.
what I'm doing is I'm building the environment. Like, I mean, all adventures are, I'm going to build the environment that you're going to go and play through,
Yeah.
and have your adventure in. But a demiplane is a very specifically diegetically, uh, explained reason for someone to think about what is this place supposed to be,
That's
and
true.
then what are you supposed to feel about it and seem and experience, and then what's actually going on behind the scenes, like what magics or other items are actually powering what's happening here. So I think about any of the Ravenloft demi-planes, right? All of them
Mm.
exist because of a dreadlord,
Hmm.
right? And it's the dreadlord's will upon this place that changes it and makes it what they want people to come in and experience,
Yeah.
into whether they're consciously or subconsciously doing it.
Yeah.
So this is essentially, the same idea where I'm like, okay, now I get to be very, very specific about the logistics of this place, why it exists the way it does, and then therefore be able to go, okay, so what's actually going on?
Yeah.
And what's actually happening. And there's a lot of logistics to go behind this stuff.
Really?
There's a surprising amount that you have to think about. Um, so I guess so there will be very minor spoilers from my adventure. I won't be going too much in depth because I want people to experience it for themselves. Um, but essentially the premise is that the long ago, well, not long ago, a couple years ago, there was this very famous harper bard, and his name is Errant Quill. And he's very powerful, and he's very much like, uh, taking down evil, corrupt leaders across for the Forgotten Realms. And he's this, this legend
Mhm.
in some sense. But he does get corrupted by an evil artifact and turned to evil.
Oh, yeah. Now we're getting
And
into good
that
stuff.
makes him dangerous, right? Because here's this dude who's very familiar with how like these evil people, these evil rulers and lords and archmages work,
Mhm.
and so would know how to do that. Is a bard, and therefore is extremely charismatic. Has a lot of like, um, experiences manipulating people and hiding who he is.
Mhm.
Um, and then has the abilities of a very high level bard. And so the Harpers, who he was part of, was like, look, we need to figure this out, but we can't have you going around freely because you might go and hurt somebody,
Yeah.
or you might come and hurt us. That's not great. And so they construct a demiplane to hold him in, like this prison.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so they boop him in here. Uh, and now it's all about, okay, and then for me, it was both me and I guess the Harpers diegetically,
Mhm.
to go, what would a prison that's meant to look like a demiplane look like
Mhm.
for a bard who you do respect and you do like see as your colleague and
Yeah.
perhaps a friend, so you don't want to like torture them or like lock them up into a tower for like 10 million years or whatever.
Yes.
Just like you want to be nice to them because they're your friend. So how do you do that, and how do you keep him safe, and how do you keep everyone else safe um, while doing this?
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's a lot of so basically they constructed this demiplane,
Mhm.
and they constructed a whole village in this demiplane with people that exist in here, and basically they have provided him a life in here to be just a casual entertainer and just like chilling out, and he's comfortable and happy and all that stuff. So it was a really interesting thing to think about, being like, what does commerce look like here?
Yeah.
How does food work here? How do you explain not being able to leave? Do people in this village want to leave, or do they just want to stay here forever? Um, it was really interesting because my touchstone for making this was Shakespeare and the Truman Show.
Ha. Yeah.
And over time, and when I reread it recently, I was just like, and this is just WandaVision. This is just WandaVision. Did I just make WandaVision, but
Yes.
like
Yes, you
before
did.
WandaVision came out?
Yes, you did.
So, yeah, so nobody can say that I stole anything because I made this a whole year ago.
That's
But
amazing.
there's a whole like aspect of that too. It was really funny to look at that. But yeah, so that's the premise, and basically the start of the adventure is the adventurers being hired by the Harpers and being asked, "Hey, we have finally found the cure. Can you go into this demiplane for us and administer it to him? Uh, and you have to use this book to get in,
Mhm.
which is only in Candlekeep. So You have to
Oh,
hop in there and get the book. Um,
okay, okay.
yeah, and and then you get in there, and the demiplane, something is going wrong with it. It's going haywire.
No, thank you.
Uh, yes. So, uh, again, very WandaVision.
Yes,
For
yes.
just like, something's wrong here. Uh, so,
So if you like WandaVision, you'll probably like Kienna's
you'll
adventure.
probably like this one. Uh, yeah, it was a very weird coincidence to kind of read
That's
back and be like,
awesome.
oh, huh. Yeah, so that's the basic thing. So yeah, so having to figure out like how does this demiplane work was a really interesting challenge because most people just like it just exists,
Yeah.
right? Like here's this magic dude that is when I want a place here. Uh and it happened. And I'm like, no, this is like a very intentional demiplane and had a very intentional purpose, which is, to keep a guy here, but to also keep him like safe and comfortable and hopefully happy. It is kind of hard to be happy when you know that you've been put into a place of captivity, no matter how nice the place is. But yeah.
So we talked about it a little bit off air, but like you said that you made some specific like characters and creatures for this adventure.
Yeah. So I had this really interesting challenge of like exploring how do I make Quill?
Hmm.
Because he's this supposed to be this very powerful bard, and especially for 11th level characters, like what is a challenging NPC look like that isn't OP enough to just try to brute force his way out of this demiplane, which is another thing I had to think about, like how do you prevent people from leaving,
Yeah.
like how does that work?
So many
The answer is
NPCs.
a lot of magic. um uh yeah, so it's like
Is
let's
it okay
just
if I show what he looks like, or would you like me to
yeah,
hold?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
You can show what
because
our handsome man looks
we
like.
have a handout for Quill,
Yeah.
which is freaking, oh my god, he is handsome. Kienna,
Yeah, he's a handsome boy.
why did you do this
Uh
to us?
well, because you just gotta make a handsome boy sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Hello. Hello. Wait, what's that? What the hell's that? That's a
I,
is that an eyeball on his shoulder?
just casually.
I hate
No
that.
biggie. Don't worry about that.
Hate that.
Yeah, so his name is Errant Quill. Yeah, so basically so I had to kind of think about, how does that work here? And again, small minor spoiler here. Um, there's also the idea that, we're populating this village, but also if you're with an evil person, you don't really want to like put people in there with that he could hurt. Um, and so yeah, so the Harpers came to like you know what, we're going to make fake people and they're going to exist in here. Um,
I took a quick look at his stats. He's scary, Kienna.
yeah, he used to single-handedly take down people like
Like,
evil, like corrupt lords and like archmages. That used to be his thing. So you can imagine why people were like, "Oh, he's evil now.
oh my god.
Let's just put him away
So for
for
any
a
of
little
you for
bit."
any of you watching or listening, all of the NPCs inside of the Candlekeep Mysteries book, they have been created inside of Roll20. They have their own character sheets. They have all their abilities tied to it and everything. So I literally just went into Aaron Quill's, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but Kienna, Supreme Mockery is terrifying.
Yeah,
Terrifying.
yeah, he's a bard to the extreme.
Like that's and it's such a clever name. Like, oh, I've got Vicious Mockery. Oh, I have Supreme Mockery. Thank you.
Yes, yes, he's very OP and he's meant to be, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what the whole premise is. And obviously having a party will help.
Yes.
Um,
I hope
and
so.
you're not supposed to go up against him. It is a possibility, but hopefully you're there to help him.
Yeah, that's
So
okay. Well, that's good. There's a possibility you don't have to deal with that.
there's a if you do it the way that I envisioned
Hmm.
and you manage to be convincing, he will let you help him.
Oh
Uh,
no.
but he's a very paranoid man,
Yeah.
which you can imagine being somebody who is extremely powerful, and then your friends are like, no, you are dangerous and now you must go into this prison, goodbye.
Yeah, it's
uh
fair. Okay, you gotta
he's
you gotta be
he's
there.
not super happy about this. And the adventures are going to be like probably the first new people he's seen in a very long time.
Oh my
uh
goodness.
so just vibing there. um but yeah,
I
it's
love
yeah.
this.
Yeah, so he's a very fascinating he was a very fascinating person to kind of construct this around. Um, and like this version of the adventure is not what I first started off with or what I first pitched.
Mm-hmm.
But he always existed as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like my very first iterations was around a bard named Errant Quill. Uh, and he's evolved and he's changed alongside the concept of the adventure itself. But the idea of having everything kind of center around, and with a lot of adventures and a lot of mysteries, it's really crucial to have strong NPCs to deal with, and he's definitely one of the main like uh, linchpins
Yeah.
in the whole adventure.
And it's so something else that I noticed. I was opening one of the handout about the adventure itself. It's a
Hmm.
script of a play written in common. So like there was
Yes.
specific languages to that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, the book itself, the book that's the key to this demiplane,
Yeah.
and that is kind of the center around this mystery, uh, is a uh, is a play. It's
Mm-hmm.
and this is where Shakespeare comes to come in, and Shakespeare, Errant Quill, kind of
Yeah.
being this, like here's this legendary bard, um, and it was just a really interesting thing to kind of go like, how do you communicate a person's life story? Because that's what this is supposed to be. It's Errant Quill's life.
Yes.
Um, and I was like, what about a play? Because generally speaking, in any given point of time, when there's a historical person who is very famous, you tend to, if you want to tell that story to the common people, you tell it through theater.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I made it a playbook, and so it's this whole script. Obviously, it's made into 3-act synopsis
Which is cool as hell.
for the DM, um, and that 3-act kind of mirrors the way that I paced out the adventure too. Is having kind of 3 discrete but connected uh, paths and beats of the adventure itself. Uh, so yeah, so it's a play that's about him. Obviously, it's the names have been changed,
Yeah.
um, and like here's this kind of fan like ma- elements of it have been made more fantastical over time. But yeah, it's a story about him.
Oh my
So
god.
it's become this really interesting thing for people if adventurers take the time to read through it,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to understand who he is beyond what the Harpers tell them before hopping in, and that may be very useful for when you're trying to interact with him
Mm-hmm.
uh, and all that stuff.
I was looking at the first part of finding the book, and it says like the characters have been hired by, was it Rylia?
Yeah.
Rylia, a female human archmage, and there's like there's a link to the archmage stats. And I'm like, don't give them that. Don't give them that. Don't give them the ability to fight the first person they meet. We know what happens if we do that.
Yeah, you don't need to do that. Please don't fight her.
Oh my god.
She's just over here just being like, please go and help out my friend.
Yeah.
I can't go in there myself, so
Yeah.
take the cure.
Wait, why can't she go
And
in there herself?
like
Is
so
that a mystery,
there's this fun
Kienna?
thing about, no, that's not the mystery.
Okay.
It could be. uh no, basically Candlekeep is a very interesting place. So as those of you who are familiar with Forgotten Realm lore, and actually if you get Candlekeep Mysteries, they do have a whole thing about the actual place. But it is the biggest, most famous library
Mm-hmm.
in Faerun.
Mm-hmm.
And basically you can in order to enter, you have to bring a book that
Oh.
it doesn't have in its archives. And I can imagine having a library hundreds of years old, uh, and going, okay, do I have a book that they don't have? Because that's the only way that you can get in.
Oh my
Um,
God, it's so pretty too.
yeah. And the Harpers are also very interesting, where they kind of are like, they're that secret organization that everyone knows about.
Oh, okay, got it. So they're like,
They're kind of like, they everyone knows that the Harpers exist. Like they're
yeah,
this group of vigilante good people, who take down evil. Um, but like, generally speaking, you don't go, I'm a Harper. You don't walk into a bar and go, hello, fellow adventurers. I am a Harper. Uh, generally speaking, not the type of person you do
yeah.
that with. And as you can imagine, also, like, if you put away your friend for like a few years, uh, they're gonna have mixed feelings upon seeing you. Um,
That makes
and so,
sense.
like, this is this is kind of like a hello, third party neutral. Just we'll pay you money to do this.
Got it.
Go do this, please.
There's so much stuff here. The granary, Smithy and
Yeah,
stables.
there's a really awesome map, and it's really cool. There's a lot going on there. Like, Candlekeep is like a pretty self-contained mini town unto itself. Like, it has its own, like, shipments and imports of food, uh,
There's
and
a
like,
bathhouse.
yeah, super cash.
I I need.
Yeah, because the avowed, the people who work there basically live there too. Um,
Oh, okay, yeah. So they need a place to wash up. Okay, that
yeah, so
makes
they
sense.
kind of, like, basically, this is their whole life, is being like the same way that you have monks at a temple. Like, it's very similar,
Yeah,
from my understanding at least. That you have the
that's
avowed
cool.
to
It
the
it made
Candlekeep.
it like you said. It made it self-sustaining. Like there was actual thought into how do they live here and take care of themselves.
Yeah, and you go like, oh yeah, so like, I know there's a couple of other adventures where it really specifically calls to Candlekeep itself,
Hmm.
um, which are really cool. Or like, taking leads about, because, like, oh yeah, here's this food source that we import into Candlekeep from this place. And there's a whole adventure that's all around that, that exists in the book. But yeah, it's a really fascinating location. Some of the adventures definitely stay more in there,
Hmm.
as some of us just kind of go, and we're off to another place.
Okay,
uh,
okay.
so yeah,
Are
but
we
they all start at Candlekeep.
are we able to look at the map of Wisteria Veil?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do that.
Okay. Ooh, okay. And it literally looks like pages in a book.
Yeah, so all the maps have been polished that way.
That's
I
interesting.
Fun fact about writing this adventure is that I too also had to draw the maps. It's not This is not the I
Oh,
didn't draw the final versions, but
yeah.
I have sketches of mine somewhere. Uh,
That's so you drew this. Like you made this design though.
I drew a very early version of that map. Yes.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, and it was an interesting challenge. I am very bad at uh lengths, distances,
I
conceptualization.
understand.
There are many times where I go, how long is that? And I'm about 5'2", so I just try to visualize myself lying down, and then
Oh.
just calculating how many me's would fit in there. Uh, because that's uh that's how I get around my brain not
You know,
understanding
but
how long 60 feet is.
it worked. It legit worked.
It works. I have a general approximation of stuff. Um, so yeah, it was a really interesting challenge of me going, so how big is this place? How far away are things from each other? What is space? Like, I'm good at like relative spatial awareness.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just really bad at like actual, like, this is 60 feet versus this is 100 feet. I'm like,
Ooh, yes.
I hit.
So someone asked a really interesting question that I'm glad they reminded me. Like, when you come into this book, do people know that someone's in the book?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So basically, Quill has been here for a very long time.
Yeah.
For us in the material plane, it's been 3 years. Uh,
Oh yeah. Okay.
yeah, so he's pretty well aware, and it's a small village, so he's
Is Quill
pretty
a
well
human?
aware who's there. Quill is human.
Oh
He's
no,
a human dude.
baby,
Uh,
you're not gonna live forever. Someone needs to help you fast.
yeah, no, it hasn't felt like 3 years for him, but it's been 3 years that
Oh, okay.
he's been in there, and that the harbors have been desperately trying to figure out how to reverse this like curse that's on him.
Hmm.
Um, they're like, how do I do this? Um, so yeah, so yeah, I mean, you could try. It is this very, again, if you have fake people in here, what happens if those fake people die?
Oh,
That was
yeah.
a thing I had to think about. Be like, what happens here? So yeah, I wouldn't say it's not impossible
Okay.
because people can die. I
Yeah.
say in big quotation marks. Um, and so yeah, that's a very interesting thing.
Okay.
I'm very,
Okay.
I think it's an interesting avenue to explore. And that's the fun thing about writing these adventures
Yeah.
is that like I'm providing a toolkit, right? I'm providing a toolkit for the DM to go, okay, let me run an adventure. Um, what's the set? What's the set? What's the set pieces? And that's the other fun thing about this is that I a lot of my creative background comes from performance and theater,
Hmm.
as well as a bunch of other stuff. And so having a play as kind of the framework and having a character, a main character who's a bard, kind of made this really fun to kind of be like, okay, so what do I provide here? I'm providing a set, which is this it's this demi-plane of Wisteria Veil. I'm
Hmm.
providing main characters for people to interact with, and I'm providing set pieces. And it's really interesting to try to differentiate them. And so yeah, so it's a really fun, interesting, and creative challenge of going, like this is generally how I expect people to run through it.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously giving some space for, you know, interesting solutions. Like, let me go in and pretend to be one of these fake people. It's not impossible. I have given space for that to be a possibility, but it's definitely not what I thought about.
Yeah.
But there should hopefully in the adventure should be enough tools for the DM to go, okay, what is this? Does this make how do I make sense of this?
Hmm.
And I hope I
Yeah.
give them enough like context about, how does the demi plane work and how does, what is the internal logistics for them to go, okay, so we just have to remove one of these other fake people and make it exist.
Lord, there's
So yeah.
so many maps. Is this seems like the kind of book that was like when I saw it being created and like the individual stories, I'm like, this is what Roll20 was made for, because being able to just like have all of the different stories in one place, open and close them, and then just have like, oh, you know what, let's open up the Curious Tale of Wisteria Veil and the Candlekeep Deconstruction. I'm not even gonna go into that one.
Yeah, that one is wild. I love that one. It's fantastic. It is so much.
Oh gosh. Okay, you know
It is
I'm.
it is a lot. It is so much of an adventure. And that's the great thing. And that's what I've really appreciated about this book is that, it's an anthology.
Mm-hmm.
And that like it's we've had a pretty wide diversity of writers and therefore also a pretty wide diversity of what people uh, you know, thought of
Yeah.
as a as a D&D story, or thought of as D&D narrative, or thought of as, a mystery within this because uh, a lot about D&D does kind of function around the let's go find out what's happening. right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, there's this thing that's happening. Time for the adventurers to step in and go do their stuff. But to actually try to center it around a mystery is a very interesting uh, part, especially considering there are a lot of other systems that are built for mysteries.
Yeah.
Which D&D, as wonderful as it is not built for mysteries specifically.
Yes.
So it's just it's an interesting challenge to look at.
Yeah, so that's a good point, because it was, you were taking like a system that has so much fantasy combat and exploration, and then figuring out how to write this for mysteries, how to make it and earlier on you were talking about like all of the possibilities, and then like putting a bunch of queries and questions, and I'm like, oh my god, this Candlekeep Mysteries is a great name, because Kienna just said 12 different things, and I don't know what any of them exactly mean. And now I have all these ideas, and I'm asking all of these questions, and I'm like, oh my god, they got me.
Yeah.
She did it.
So mine is definitely one of the lighter on the mystery side
Mm-hmm.
adventures, just because of how it ended up being constructed at the end.
Yeah.
But there are some that are like very intensive, like, who done it, or like, where did these people go, or any of those other stuff. So yeah, it's really worth um picking up again, and just checking out all these awesome stuff that other people have written.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
super cool.
is there an adventure that you want someone to run for you?
Oh God. I mean, I've read through them, so I spoiled myself because I really wanted to see what my fellow writers
That
were
makes
doing.
sense to me.
But I adore the Book of Inner Alchemy,
Book of Inner Alchemy.
which is Daniel Kwan's adventure. Um,
Ooh,
it's
yes.
actually the level 12 adventure. So if you're in the book, it's literally right after mine. It's really fun.
Oh, I didn't even realize that they were organized in Roll20 by that order as well. All I had to do was
hey.
scroll down.
Yeah, so Daniel's
Ooh, look at that cover.
adventure, the Book of Inner Alchemy, it's really cool in a couple ways. One, it re-envisions how chi or ki in the D&D uh lore works,
Mm-hmm.
like how it changes the canon of that,
Ooh,
um
awesome.
from like a mystical power to the just more similar to real world understandings of chi, at just like an energy that exists in every
Mm-hmm.
living thing,
That makes
and that
sense.
you just harness, right, when you start training as a monk.
That's awesome.
And so that was really cool. And then yeah, his adventure um is so Asian. It's in like the best possible way.
Yeah.
Because we've had, a lot of, unfortunately,
Yeah.
very misrepresented Asian people and stories in TTRPGs in general,
Yeah.
but D&D is definitely not innocent of it either. Um, and so to have, a Chinese writer come in and go, I'm going to do a very Chinese story, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And his stuff is very inspired by, like the Shaw Brothers movies, and stuff like that. And it's great. It's so much fun. It's like the best kinds of martial arts movies, in a D&D
Yes.
adventure, with a whodunit in it, and a really powerful item as well. It's dope. It's a great adventure. So I highly recommend people checking out that one. And
Ooh.
yeah, it is cool because like, Daniel and I are both, Chinese Canadian. We both live
Yep.
in the same city, surprisingly. But
Hey.
our adventures and our takes on mysteries within Candlekeep are incredibly different.
Yeah.
But both very valid to be both diverse types of stories.
That's true.
Uh, so yeah, I super highly recommend that one.
That's
It's
cool.
a lot of fun. It's yeah, it just breaks some really cool grounds with what D&D can do.
Cover is
Yeah,
dope
and
as
with
hell.
some really awesome like Asian coded like NPCs in there as well. And it's yeah, they're dope.
Oh my God, like yeah, way of the even so references like the way of the open hand is a monastic tradition centered on the defensive and healing uses of ki and martial arts combat. Gives different names, the Wren brothers, and gives even pronunciation.
Hmm. And he like has developed this whole organization, which is kind of the diaspora equivalent here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, these are exiles from east of Faerun who have come here and are trying to make a life here. So yeah, so the Order of the Immortal Lotus is Daniel's creation, and it's really fun. It's a really fun adventure.
So, like in finding the book, it says they might encounter the book while researching one of the following topics: the nature of ki and its use in hand to hand combat and healing, legends pertaining to immortality, the crafting of magic weapons, or monastic traditions, especially the way of the open hand. So, I love that, like, there's the different aspects of finding the book, and it can be about like looking for it because of someone telling you about it, or like coming across it because of just interest in these general ideas.
Hmm.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, like all of these books in Candlekeep Mysteries,
Mm-hmm.
um, and therefore all these adventures have
Yeah.
varying different types of hooks into them. Um, all of them again lead to Candlekeep itself. So yeah, so some of them are more just like, hey, if you're already here and you're kind of looking into stuff, here's a possible adventure that comes out of it.
That's
And
so
you know,
cool.
and then there's some like mine, which are very like specific call outs of like, hey, we need you to go to Candlekeep and find this book
Mm-hmm.
and go do a thing. Um,
I love that
so
too because then you give if you have a group that's great for the level of Wisteria Veil, you give them a reason to go to Candlekeep if they're not already there.
yeah, yeah, it's a really good way to kind of get them into this really again famous place
Mm-hmm.
and one that's been beloved in Forgotten Realms lore and all that stuff.
Yeah. So when you're writing an adventure like this
Hmm.
and you're thinking mystery, so I give them like at least something to solve or like make their mind turn a little bit. How do you balance that out with fun?
Yeah, so a lot of where it comes down to for me is um, mysteries have a secret,
Mm-hmm.
but that secret shouldn't be a surprise by the end of it.
That makes sense.
We see a lot of like, people being like, "Ah, boo!" Like, uh, my adventurers guessed my twist before they even got there. I'm like, no, you're doing a good job then, right? You're
Yeah.
laying out the groundwork for them to come to that conclusion themselves, where it feels like a natural endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like no matter how many twists and turns their pathway takes, um, where they end up should make sense looking back on it.
Yes.
Um, and there's a lot of, when you're looking at mysteries, is that when you're creating a mystery story, you generally know what the truth is. And this comes back to the way that I GM. It's like what the actual thing behind the scenes is,
Mm-hmm.
to some extent, right? You sometimes like it to every single detail, like it was the butler in the living room with the candlestick,
Yes.
right? But sometimes it's just more general, right? It's just like uh you know I'm gonna do some spoilers for my Burn Bright series Against the Stars season 1, which we completed a few months ago. So if you haven't watched that, just, I don't know, or if you're interested in watching that, my behind the scenes was, um, here's a corporation
Mm-hmm.
um, who is trying to get monopoly on this resource.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's really happening here. And they're doing all this sabotage and they're influencing all these things and they're trying to, they have crossed paths with the adventurers because that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I've known that since the very beginning. Uh, but
Oh, okay.
but I then construct very loosely what the flow of the adventure is, and that changes based on what the players do. Um, but I want to leave little bits and pieces to lead them to that conclusion there. Um, And so that's the whole point. And there's this very fun thing of like most people don't pick up on a clue or understand the significance of it until it's repeated 3 times. Uh,
That makes
so like
sense.
because once if you see it once, you're like, well, that's just adding to the general feel of what's going on. If you have it twice, it might be a coincidence, or they might just miss that second time.
Yeah.
If you do it a third time, that generally speaking, point people will be like, that's starting to be a pattern.
Yep. There's
Maybe I should
purpose.
start paying attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so,
Yeah.
having to find ways to put those in is a really interesting challenge. So yeah, so when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, so I know there's something that's screwing up this demi-plane.
Mm-hmm.
And I know as the person who's writing the adventure, and if you're the DM eventually, you'll know too why it's messing up. Uh,
Yes, that's
and you
true.
go, okay, so like here's why it's being messed up. Now, how do I get them? How do I get them to get to that place eventually? And so just dropping clues along the ways, some of them more heavy handed than others. And that's totally fine because what you're doing is you're delivering what people need to know to eventually get to the end point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so that's how I generally GM too. It's like I know what is actually happening, but how we get there is going to be fluid with some of my own like set in stone tools um, in order to build the story to get there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Neat. So, okay, so when you wrote your Candlekeep adventure, when you wrote Wisteria Veil, how how was it like going back and seeing the process? Because it's like when you see something you've made, do you think that you would DM it even a little bit differently than you made it, or like do you feel like the way that you wrote it actually makes it easier for you to DM?
Um, I mean, I think for me, personally, I think it makes it pretty easy for me to
Yeah.
DM because um I I wrote it's almost this kind of like reverse
Mm-hmm.
engineering where I write something that's pretty specific to how I would run it.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, if someone was to come into here and do anything that deviates from this, how do I build that space in?
Oh, that makes sense. That's smart.
Right. So like I go general like and again the way that I construct my GM notes or whatever are it's pretty loose
Yeah.
anyway, so it's not like a huge ton of work to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, you're trying to build something for other people to use, and not just for you to use. And so playtesting kind of becomes very helpful there,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is a part of the process. I wasn't personally involved in it,
Yeah.
but people did playtest the adventure before it was put into the book. Uh, and yeah, so it's this interesting thing where like coming back to it because it's been over a year since I first started work on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I can go back and I can go. I mean, I can totally see, how if I was really going to try to railroad a group, how I would do it because that's basically what I put in here.
Yeah.
But I can see the spaces where like if I had a very specific kind of uh, group of adventurers, that's I can I'm very familiar with the source materials and the tools in this toolkit
The,
to then kind of hop out and explore. And I hope that, you know, what the adventure does, it does the same thing. It makes people feel comfortable. It makes DMs feel comfortable about the setting and about the key players so that they can, if things start to go off the rails,
yeah.
they're able to kind of improvise off of that.
When I looked at your adventure a little bit, it felt like you also left it open so that if people wanted to come back to these NPCs, like if they wanted to keep them a part of their world, they could.
It's very possible. It's a little complicated with the demi-plane
Yeah,
logistics
yeah,
for some
yeah,
of it,
yeah.
but for the key players, definitely for sure. Like I wanted to make sure that there were aftermath
Mm-hmm.
repercussions to it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really important to me at least to feel like um, if you're tying an adventure or you're running a one shot, that it does feel like it's has some repercussions
Yeah.
and some consequence to what happened. And I mean, uh, it's very easy to slip into like one-off mentality, especially for a demi-plane,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because you're like, well, this this place doesn't really exist in our realm. So whatever. And I wanted it to have a longer reaching thing, and allowing DMs again to have the power to go, let me just go and like find ways to tie this into the greater world. And the hope is that like if people are coming into this with campaigns, they can go, here's how I take this and I plop it into my own campaign, and then therefore not feel like just a weird side quest,
Yeah.
but it has actual like ties and affects my actual rest of my campaign. Not to like the greatest like, let me destroy your campaign, but
Yes.
let me add in some interesting elements that you can throw in if you would like to.
That's true. It's you because you're giving them tools that even outside of this they can recreate them, they can reuse them, they can
Yeah,
rehash them in new ways.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I hope that people are going to be able to be like, I saw some people in chat were like, yeah, I want like to be able to take Errant Quill and put him somewhere else. I'm like, perfect. He's a wonderful NPC. And I hope that you enjoy putting him in wherever you want to put him in.
Oh God,
Uh,
rest in
'Cause
peace wherever they put him in.
yeah, I mean, it really depends on whether he's still evil or not. Because if he's still evil, that may be a problem for them.
Wait, is there a
But
possibility he can get out of the book evil?
uh, no, but if they want to put him
Okay,
into their own campaigns,
you
um,
had me scared, Kienna. I'm like, hold on,
no,
wait.
the demi-plane prison is built to keep him in, so it's he cannot leave that book while he's still evil.
Can I
Uh,
can I ask you a obnoxious player question?
sure,
If someone casts dispel magic on the book, what happens?
that's a fun question. It is much too high of a level to do dispel magic on.
Cool, I like it. Good answer. Awesome.
It's Please imagine this whole organization of very high powered. If the bard's this high powered, please imagine the rest of the organization, and then all of the smart people going, let's make this prison. And that's the level of magic you're expecting.
Oh,
Uh
yeah. Okay. So basically,
Here.
I saw a steel door and I threw a toy hammer at it.
Yes.
Got it. Cool.
They're
Cool.
like, well, you certainly did a thing. There was a effect.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Okay. Cool. 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 Cool.
But
I'm
that's,
just,
these are all good questions. These are the questions that I've had to think about. Be like,
hey, I'm
how does
asking
that
it
work?
because when I run it, I know someone's going to try it. And I'm going to be like, well, actually, I asked Kienna, and the answer to that question is this. Instead of being like, well, Gabe, like, why can't we do that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. Now I do.
Yeah, it's just, again, it was pretty intentional. Like, here's this other organization that's been doing this, and they're pretty damn powerful. Like,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be so easily unraveled. Um, yeah, wish is a fun one to think about, uh, because uh, Quill doesn't have wish. Uh, Quill wishes he did,
You know,
but he doesn't.
if they're going to use a wish spell on a book, and that I personally, I might be like, you know what? He's out in the world now. Are you happy? Are you happy?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to do that, sure. Uh, that would bring a lot of problems
God,
as you unleash this powerful evil bard
look,
into the world.
looking at Quill, like looking at his stat block in the roll
Hmm.
20 thing, and then like thinking like if he got out into Candlekeep by himself.
Yeah, so like very specifically, the book is designed so that any teleportation or any of that magic doesn't cross
You
planes.
thought this out.
I did. I had to go, how many ways can I? It's funny because in the how do I keep a high level bard in here problem extends to the rest of the adventurers because they're lower level than he is. Uh,
Oh, okay. Yep.
so I was just like, all right, so what are the different ways that Quill could try to get out? Because he has magic, and he has all the time of the world as long as he's stuck here.
Oh,
And I,
I looked at some of his spells. If he could get out, he would have.
yes,
I see that.
yes, he cannot. So, um,
Oh my
So
god,
yes.
he's terrifying. That's not a one per day thing. Supreme Mockery is just like, gross.
Yeah. He just feel if he feels like supremely mocking you, he will.
Yo, don't piss him off. Don't. The person who wants to let the evil bard out with a whisk spell, convince them not to. Convince them not to. Like, have them piss off the
Yeah.
bard a little bit, and then be like, aha, 12d10.
Yeah. He's very casually powerful, which is the point of him.
Yeah.
Um, and which is why he's locked up in there, and also probably why the Harpers don't want to go in there themselves. Cause can you imagine if you're just you're just vibing, you're doing your thing, and obviously something happened to you, you turn evil, you're not gonna think that, oh no, I'm evil, I must be locked away. Uh, and then your friends are like, you're in danger now. You need to to be locked away for a bit, and you're
Yeah.
like, excuse me, no.
Yep.
Um, but you do. You get put into this place, and it's been over a year. Uh, I imagine that anybody would be kind of pissed
Yeah.
at who you thought your friends were. There you go. And if they suddenly showed up,
Did Mind Blank already exist, or did you make that up?
I believe that already exists.
Because it foils even wish spells. Kienna, you thought of everything.
There's a lot that I had to think about.
Oh my
in this. When
God.
I said that I had to come up with every single possibility to prevent this dude from escaping.
You were not kidding. And so like it's like, you know what? God, there's gonna be one party that comes across Quill and is like, oh, can I hit him? And they roll a 15 and they're like, oh yeah, you hit. They're like, ha, got him. You made him easier to hit, but it's bad if you hit him.
Also this very fun thing about the demiplane is if you're trying to prevent your colleague from hurting other people, but also from being hurt himself. Because you wouldn't want your friend in their cursed state to go and do something, that you wouldn't want them to. So I also built in demiplane rules about when and if he can get hurt while he exists in here. So
is the mystery how is the party still alive? is that this Candlekeep mystery?
I mean,
like you talked about yours being like not so much of a mystery, but yours is the one that's giving me the most questions. Like it's like, well, is this a good idea? That's the mystery to me. Is this a good idea?
Yeah. So like, I would not recommend this adventure for the murder hobo parties. Mostly because they will be in way over their heads if they're in here.
Yeah,
because they're again, it is a mystery. It is meant to be a explorer and talk to people and then sometimes fight your way out of trouble kind of thing. It's not meant to be a let's go start fights. So yeah, I mean, I would not recommend the murder first instinct people to do this, or at least being very clear that
that's how they learn.
That it will be a problem. Again, you're trying to convince this dude, let me cure you, and trying to. And the fun fact about this, very minor spoilers, is that the cure takes the form of a dagger that you do have to stab him with.
Oh, God.
And I did have to think about, what if they ambush him? And I go, like I said, the demiplane has rules about when Quill can or can't be hurt.
You have contingencies for everything.
I literally do. It was most of my work on this adventure was, how do I make it so that it's believable that these are all difficult obstacles in your way to doing your job. Uh,
Oh my god.
but yeah, so you do have to. He has to give consent
Yeah.
to be given the cure,
Oh
which means
wow.
consenting to being stabbed by the magical dagger that has the purifying magic in it. Uh,
That's so intense.
yeah. So as you can imagine, just walking in and being like, "Let me stab you," it's probably not going to go the way that you think it might.
Wow. So you made it so that like when they try to have that like they try to have that encounter, the world's like, nope. This is like stabby magic evil Cinderella. You gotta you gotta get him to say yes first and have him agree to it. And
Yep.
that's it's such an interesting precedent of like what people I feel like aren't usually used to. They're like, I'll get him when they least expect it. No, he has to see it coming, like at least
Yeah, he
partially.
has to see it coming and he has to be okay with it, which most people would not be okay with being stabbed. Um, and there's a tidbit in his story, and if you look at his art, he has a big old scar on his face, which uh happens to be from a dagger uh that comes from a traumatic part of his life, which may have set him upon his path of being a harper. Uh,
So, Kienna, you made it so that he had a scar from a dagger, and the only way to cure this man is to use another dagger.
yeah,
That's so messed. The mystery is why are you like this? Why would you do
you
that to
know,
this boy?
my players ask that question every single week.
Oh my gosh. Uh, Aki, this is the curious tale of Wisteria Veil, the one, not mysterious, curious, salty, curious, uh, which is written by the lovely Kienna Shaw, who is also potentially an evil mastermind. Oh my god, are you Errant Quill?
No, so funny fact, a couple years ago, I ran a campaign,
Mm-hmm.
where it, funny enough, kind of was related to books, and related to, basically the idea was that a a powerful archmage of some form set up shop
Mm-hmm.
in this land, um, and they were a storyteller, but all of their stories would start come to life, but in a twisted manner, and so I got to take fairy tales and kind of just tweak them a little bit, and throw them at my adventurers,
That's awesome.
um, which was really fun. Beauty and the Beast, but the beauty is the beast, and with a were tiger. Uh,
Hot.
very hot.
Yeah.
The party immediately try to fight them, because that's what happens when you're in a ball and suddenly there's a were tiger. Um, yeah, there was also other stuff about here is Alice in Wonderland, but Alice is actually the has become the Queen of Hearts,
Ooh,
um,
scary. Don't like that
and
one.
is yeah, and has kind of dominated this place. But so yeah, so there's this storyteller in their tower, who's just vibing and making stories which actually affects real people. Um, and eventually, the adventurers managed to collect all the pages, after defeating all of these like twisted fairy tales, and unlocked the tower and walked in. And the archmage was me. It was the DM,
I respect that so much.
and they fought in game me.
Did you win,
Uh,
or did they win?
no, they won.
I
Um,
guess that's good.
yeah, and I had it so that there were all these mysterious windows with different faces watching, definitely casually Twitch chat, uh who were helping the party by donating special benefits for them to beat me.
How dare you?
So yeah, so that was like 2 or 3 years ago. Um,
Oh, this is
so
kind of clever.
I have been on this bullshit
Yeah.
for a very long time.
Oh, damn. You're
I'm
clever. Someone literally said, "So, Kienna, you play chess, huh?"
I mean, in some ways, yes. And and part of my chess is being able to be flexible with what my players are doing. So again, it's really important to know what's really happening behind the scenes, and it's important to know what hints you want to leave, but you got to let the players explore and get to those hints on their in whatever trajectory they want to. So yeah, so I just kind of just.
Someone said, "Don't worry,
Mhm.
Aaron Quill can't leave the book." Is exactly what Aaron Quill, who has left the book, would want us to believe. Kienna equals Quill.
Yeah, yes, me. I am the handsome boy.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's fair. That's fair. Own it. How did you come up with the concept of Quill?
oh yeah, so I love bards.
Yeah, I think bards are
My
underappreciated.
my very first character in a TTRPG was a bard. Um, like very self-inserty, as most of your first characters are.
Yep, 100%.
And I was just like, what would this look like? Like, what? And my original concept was to have, you know, you go find this missing bard.
Hmm.
He just kind of disappeared. That's weird. And um, as you go and you try to find him, you realize that you've walked into his own play, and you are the main characters.
Hmm.
Uh, and it didn't quite work the way that I wanted it to. It's very difficult to pull off something like that without it feeling kind of frustrating
Yeah.
or circular. Uh, and it's also difficult uh, for the level that I was given, level 11, to work with. Um, but it was just like, how do I keep going? Like, how do I have a uh, really interesting story
Hmm.
about a bard? Because bards are always telling stories, and they function really interestingly when you put them as a powerful hero
Yeah, that's true.
figure.
I feel like we don't
Uh,
get very many bard villains.
yeah, no, we don't. And it's very interesting because we think about like it's like we think about, here's a villain who's like a warlock, because
Hmm.
that's really easy to be like, oh, they're tied to an evil god and they're
Yeah,
here to screw up your stuff.
yeah,
It's also very easy to do like a rogue, because like, oh, here's a sneaky person. But
yes.
like, you have to think about what would a bard villain look like, and what would a person who is very charismatic, who knows how to work with people, and talk their way in and out of trouble, and would have to really understand people to be good at their job. How dangerous would that be? And the answer is very.
Oh my gosh. I like
Um,
I like the idea. I like what you've built with Quill.
yeah, and again, I was really intrigued by, I've a theater kid.
Yeah.
I loved Shakespeare.
Yep.
And he's a story unto himself. Like, he's a legendary person, that we have stories about. We have full, like, movies and fan fiction about who we think Shakespeare is,
Yeah.
because he was able to tell such, like, long lasting Western canon stories. And I'm like, what would that look like in D&D, right? What would it look like to have someone who is so famous, uh, as a bard, but still be able to do their job, which is, go and assassinate uh, evil people, like evil rulers. Like, let me just walk into your court pretending to be you know, an entertainer, and then off you because you're a danger to the people and you're a tyrant, right? What does that look like?
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so yeah, so it's, again, it's all built around this lore about who he is, and then you actually get to meet him, but also meeting him in his, I'm an evil dude
Yeah.
now because I've been cursed by this corruption, uh, until you save me by stabbing me with a dagger.
Save me, Potty. Stab me with the dagger. You're my only hope.
You're my only hope,
This is fine.
super cash. I definitely don't have a lot of trauma around a dagger that looks like that.
No,
No
no.
worries.
So does it actually look similar to the one that like got him?
Yes. Yes.
Kienna, why?
Guys, you know,
That's okay. Fair, you got me.
I mean, some of this is just like because it's fun,
Yeah,
because it was fun for me to write and to
that's
know
so
that this is going
fair.
to be an obstacle for people to have to deal with.
Got it.
Because I really wanted to challenge people to come in here and be like, oh, so I can't do what I normally do here.
Mm-hmm.
Like the rules of this demi-plane, like, is made for a specific purpose, which is not really conducive to what you're trying to do. Um,
That
because
like you
yeah,
talked about it not being so much of a mystery, but like that there alone is a really interesting mystery to solve. Like you have a purpose that you have to do, but to do it in this place is extremely difficult. How do you make it happen? Like that is a mystery. And one that's
yeah.
like, damn, I actually have to think about this.
And there are a couple of complications that I haven't touched upon because they're big spoilers.
Ooh,
Um, so there's the thing that is messing with the rules of the demi-plane here.
of course there
Uh,
is.
I will not talk about what that is because
Oh,
that's the
got
big
it. Got it.
spoiler here.
Following.
Um, but there is something here that is messing with the demi-plane,
Gotcha.
um,
Yep.
and therefore its rules, and therefore all of its logic. So, like, imagine if you walked out one day and you were like, "Wow, this is a nice sunny day," and then all of a sudden everything turned black and white. Like that's the kind of things that are going really funky
No.
in this demi-plane when the adventurers enter into it.
No, thank you.
Um, so yeah, so there's a complication there, and that complication has a rippling effect. So basically, by the time that you kind of grasp what the rules of the demiplane are, you're seeing how it's being twisted, and there are ways to use it to your advantage. Uh, but that's the whole part of the adventure is being like, okay, what's going on here? Why are things working the way that they are? How do I use this? So yeah,
God,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
terrifying.
yeah. It's
That's awesome.
twists
I'm
and
like,
twists.
I'm
Yeah,
into. I want to run this.
yeah. It's very reality bending,
Yeah.
but it has rules
Mm-hmm.
for the reality bending. So it's not like it's not like a, surprise. Again, you don't want to surprise your players. You want to build suspense with them and you want to build up to your final reveal.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what it is. Everything about this is like all of it makes sense if you think about it. Um, it's just it's wild if you're experiencing it for the first time. Because you're like, what's happening here? Like what is this place? So yeah, it was a fun challenge, and I'm really hoping that people enjoy running and playing it because it's a very different adventure from what most people do.
You have
Again,
so
you're
much for
you're you're
this
throwing in
place
Shakespeare
too.
and Truman Show and WandaVision
Yeah.
at D&D.
Yeah.
So
You have so much, like even just for Wisteria Veil, like because there's all of the different. When I was just looking at the map, like it's written out so you can see very clearly, and it's outlined that there's like the W3, W2, W1. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like so many notes and things actually written for what these places have, what's happening in these places.
yeah,
The chart for the Wisteria Veil events, which is horrifying and really cool.
yeah. There's a lot of weird stuff happening in there,
Yeah.
um, and it's randomized because
Yeah.
it's it's just the demi plane's kind of breaking down, and that's a bad thing.
Yes. And your manor is huge. Like I get that it's a manor, but like it.
Again, they're like, how do we make this dude comfortable?
Yeah. You made a place that feels like a lot in a condensed area, which is
Mhm.
what's really interesting to me.
Which
Because
is
yeah,
a demi-plane is
yeah,
in a sense. It's like here's a contained space. What can you fit in here?
yeah. Well done.
Thank you.
So damn cool. Oh my
Yeah.
god. And I like
It's
that everything is linked with like finding Quill and
yeah.
no. I saw something about stuff in the forests outside. No, Kienna.
So
Why?
yeah, so there's a really fun thing about it's when you go, how do you have to think about dummy play. You have to go, how do you explain like just casually having a small place and not make it seem weird for the people inside? And you go, well, it's just a weird forest. You walk in and you end up on the other side sometimes. And you go, wow, I must have gotten really lost. Uh, how it
Kienna,
be?
this terrifying.
It's just a weird forest.
And it's not even like horror. It is literally like ominous mystery.
I think honestly, my adventure is one of the more lighthearted ones in the book.
What do you mean?
There are
You have to,
some
you have to get a
in
man to
there.
let you stab him. This is one of the lighthearted ones?
Yeah, there are some in there where I go, oh, you are. I think there's one where you're solving the mystery of a of the murder of a ghost who comes out of a book, and it's just
Oh,
like, hello, help me solve my death.
that's fine. This is fine.
Um, there's one that involves like kind of war crimes with between two groups.
Oh,
And so yeah, mine's one of the more lighthearted, weird shit to weird uh adventures.
hot damn. This is cool. This is cool. Good job, though. Seriously.
Yay. I'm really glad. Yeah. And again, for any of you who are watching or anything, if you have played through The Curious Tale of Wisteria Veil, please let me know. Because I would love to hear what you think about it. And all that stuff, because it's the nature of the business where you make a thing, you release it out into the world, and you hope to God people like it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, oftentimes you don't get direct feedback.
Yeah.
Because you again release it out into the world and hope to God people like it. So, uh,
Well, Kienna,
so
where
yeah,
where can people find you?
yeah. So people can find me over on Twitter at Kienna S. So that's my first name with the letter S at the end. I tweet about basically whatever I'm doing. I am also one of the co-producers of Salty Sweet Games. We do TTRPG and video game stuff over there. Actually, we are hosted over on this channel, the Roll20 channel, for our Burn Bright show, which I GM. So if you want to see what kind of GMing style I have, you can join us for Against the Stars on my brain has just forgotten for a sec. Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, so you can find me there. I'm also the co-curator of the TTRPG Safety Toolkit. So I do work about making TTRPG safe more accessible and approachable for people to use at their tables. And yeah, I kind of just float around the internet. You'll see my face pop up in places and check out stuff and sometimes publish my own games, sometimes work on publications like Candlekeep Mysteries or a bunch of other projects that are coming out. So yeah.
Well, Kienna, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me about this. I'm very excited about your adventure. I'm excited about your adventure, especially because like I have a group that I play with every now and then, and they are
Mhm.
very like, we're just gonna run in and do something wild. This adventure feels like it was made for them.
It was absolutely made for the people who are going to try to think creatively. So I'm really excited to see what creative solutions people come up with to deal with uh quite frankly the amount of bullshit that I throw at them
Yeah,
in this adventure.
hell yeah. Well, I'm excited and genuinely thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, all of you have a wonderful rest of your day. Definitely, please, if you get a chance, check out Candlekeep Mysteries on Roll20. There is a whole bunch of handouts, a bunch of creatures. There is so much stuff in this thing that it's like, it feels like you got a whole new book full of just interesting things to add to your stories. Even if you just get the book to add errant quill or versions of errant quill into your stories to terrify your players because they keep trying to attack everything first and you want them to suffer from 12d10 points of damage that can just happen. Kienna.
Yes.
So thank you again for joining, and I will see you next time on Tabletop Tabletalk. Take care.